Since creating the Finally series, I've had to sort of iterate and add new rules as I go along, as certain things come up and I'm like, does that fit or doesn't it? And iteration's a good thing. It just means that I've got a consistent, methodology moving forward. But today's edition has to be whether there's multiple versions of something. If there is just one version, then clearly, if it's longer than 5 years, it's a finally. Unless it's like the Black Cauldron where I want to discuss things that aren't just the media itself. But today's entry definitely fits into not being a finally, because there were different versions. The original version technically would be if that's what I played, but it isn't. I played a Steam version of an updated version of the game, and that only came out last year. I never had a Vita, so I couldn't play it on that, and because I hadn't completed Persona 3 FES, I didn't want to play the next one in the series in case there was any, follow-on stuff that I might be lost at. I didn't know that they were entirely standalone back then. So yeah, I'm going to talk today, after that long preamble, about Persona 4 The Golden, or Persona 4 Golden, depends on what version comes up on your title screen. But I love this, for the same reasons that I loved a lot of Persona 3. But I loved how it added certain things, certain quality of life features, which I know some of those were only for the Golden and particularly for the Steam release later on. Some of the things, unfortunately, were stripped out that I'd be interested in, some of the behind-the-scenes stuff and the promotional stuff and the concerts. I'd have loved to see some of that, but unfortunately it was stripped out of this version. It's considered obsolete. I'll accept it. And weirdly, I only learned today when I was quickly looking up some details just to check when, the timeline was, that 2 voice actors were changed, and I'm really glad for one of them in particular, because I may have mentioned before on this channel, I'm a big fan of Critical Role, and I can spot Sam Riegel's voice, or hear Sam Riegel's voice, I guess, very easily. As soon as Teddy opened his mouth, I was like, that's Riegel. That's Sam Riegel. What? And then, of course, I heard Rise, and I was like, that's Laura Bailey, being far too obsessed with me, which is very uncomfortable, because I respect her from a distance. I don't want someone voiced by her just constantly coming at me like, I want you. It's very unsettling. But I loved it. I loved it for what it was, how it built these sort of relationships with everyone. And of course, that is a big thing with the Persona series. It's all about the relationships supporting you and making you stronger in being able to make better personas. And I love the fact that this actually had a happy ending, if you play it right, and I will get onto that a bit later. But the basic gameplay was pretty much the same. You're going into a dungeon, sort of crawling around, trying to find enemies' chests and the exit, or the stairs to the next floor. But this took it to a different place than Tartarus in Persona 3, which is my only real other experience. I only really have that to compare to. Tartarus was sort of gatekept? I'm not sure. But there was a gatekeeping system in place, whereby you could only get to a certain floor of Tartarus up to a certain date, and then it would mystically unlock. So you did kind of feel like you were just in the same place over and over. Something about this felt a lot more, well put together. I didn't feel I was grinding when I was going back, because once you complete a character's dungeon, their sort of, and you beat their shadow self, you can go back in because a new strong shadow has taken residence in that room. And then you get a new weapon for normally the person that place relates to, which is great. I like that idea. The fact that you can go back to a dungeon and it doesn't feel like grinding, but technically it's allowing you to get more experience, level up a bit, so when you get the next chunk of story in the next character's dungeon, you're probably strong enough to at least make a good start on it. And I love the fact it did that. The social links didn't feel quite so overwhelming in some areas, but quite overwhelming in other areas. I actually managed to miss a few out because it wasn't really obvious that some of these people you could talk to and get those. I think better signposting of that would have been great. I got a lot of them at least started, but I know I missed, I think it was Saki Senpai's brother. I didn't know that you could talk to him multiple times after that and actually get him. And this eye person, which a lot of you apparently like from what I've seen on various boards, a lot of you have had relationships with, but I couldn't find her, and I don't even know where she was, how I was meant to get her. I looked at it afterwards and I was like, who? Where? And I don't know how I missed it. I also missed the tutor thing because I didn't get my understanding high enough to actually take that job on until quite late on, and by that point I was already kind of rolling towards the end game. But I love some of the stuff that's in here, and a lot of the stuff I love in Golden is the stuff that was added. The Marie thing was fascinating to me. The idea of this person who's lost her memories entirely, she doesn't know who she is, and unless you spend the time building that social link with her, you're never going to know, and technically you are blocked off from the real true ending of this. And that's interesting, because I wanted to really get the most out of this. Something about this really clicked. In Persona 3, I may have mentioned in the review, I didn't feel I had to do all the quests because a lot of them were cut off by a certain time. And I didn't like the fact that I've got this week-long window to do it, but you also want me to level up in Tartarus, and you also want me to do my social links, and it got a bit overwhelming. Here, apart from some that I didn't know were time-based, particularly with the twins, they apparently leave Inaba, I think mid-November if I recall correctly, so I was like, I'll get that later on. And I was running around trying to get the pieces that they wanted from a dungeon. It was the least pochette. And I was like, it's not dropping. So I looked online, it was like, oh, because they're not there anymore. And the thing won't drop if the quest's not active or able to be completed. So that was a bit annoying. After the rest of it hadn't followed that by a certain date rule that had existed in the previous game, I was quite annoyed at that. But I did get most of the quests done because I really wanted to. I looked up guides for ones that I was like, where is this? I can't figure out the nebulous clues that they're giving me are confusing me. But I got most of them done, and I enjoyed doing it. I really had a blast in just building these connections and just enjoying these characters. The extra stuff that was added, like the ski trips and things like that, which obviously led into Marie's Dungeon of Hollow Forest, was great. Again, this is meant to be a challenging dungeon, apparently, and I didn't put it on easy mode like I normally do. I think I actually put it at normal. I was like, we'll give it a go. We'll start at normal and see what happens. And I didn't feel too overwhelmed. There's a few times I died because of those Hama and Mudo skills. You will all know how annoying they can be, unless you've got a massive amount of scapegoat eggplants because of the gardening feature that was added, or homunculi. Those are the only things that will save you. But it's so frustrating every single time, just dying to someone using basically an instant kill. I know I benefited from it when I used it, and I'm like, that's great. And yes, okay, it gives you a parity with the enemies. A lot of things don't do that. A lot of games will restrict enemies from having these one-hit kills unless it serves a plot point. Unless they're a Soulsborne, that kind of thing as well. But those skills just really, really, really are so annoying when they're constantly used against you and you don't have those things that will take the blast. It was such a frustration. But one of the things I really loved about the social links, going back to that quickly, is the fact that when you build them with your team and with Rise, you are actually also able to get new skills for their personas. And then, obviously, it also leads to an upgrade of their personas. Their ultimate persona is allowed, if you will. And the fact that Rise's support was a lot better than the support you had in the previous one. She was doing the analysis and things like that, yes, but she was also healing you sometimes between rounds or after battles, or curing your ailments, or boosting your defense or attack. You could actually get to a certain point in her social link that you didn't need many items or healing rounds. In a lot of RPGs, you do need sometimes to spend a round just healing up and then fight the enemy again. But in this, you could get around that by using Rise really well, and I love that so much. But yeah, like I was saying though, the sort of last dungeon before the true end dungeon, if you will, was not that difficult if you'd actually spent the time going through the dungeon. You didn't have to go super thoroughly, just get most of it covered. If you get the thing that Rise has where you can see all the enemies and chests, brilliant, just target the enemies and then just go straight to the exit, brilliant. And as long as you did that, and went through everything twice to get the sort of weapon upgrade, you were strong enough, or you should be strong enough by the end to beat whatever's coming. Marie's dungeon was not massively challenging. It was a bit annoying. It did feel almost like the boss was just a damage sponge to a point. And I think once I'd leveled to a certain point in the game, that was unfortunately the situation. All the bosses were basically damage sponges. That was kind of, I think, the most frustrating thing. But yeah, I went through, got to the proper ending, and absolutely loved, how the music on there just worked so well. It had a very uplifting version of like the theme music and things like that. And it really felt like an achievement. And then I sat through, the various little credit moments and meeting up with the people that you'd spent this time with, coming back to Inaba later on, seeing that the fog had gone, everyone was living better lives. Even Namatame, who, had all this problem and thought he was saving people and had all this issue with the police after him, etc. He was running for mayor now. He still had that desire to save people, technically. And like I say, you met all your friends, and it was just a lovely thing. You saw how these people had, sort of grown up a little bit and got on with their lives and done certain things. And, their decisions that they'd made through knowing you and you bringing out the best version of them, you could see. And Nanako is just absolutely adorable. I don't know why I've waited till now to talk about Nanako, because I cried at this game. I have no problem with that. I've said it, I think, a number of times. Crying at media isn't a bad thing. It's not weak. It's actually allowing yourself to be fully immersed in the world, and I think that's a good thing. I cried when Nanako died for a bit. I didn't know it was for a bit. Remember, my previous experience was Persona 3, where the protagonist dies at the end. So I was prepared for death to happen. And Nanako died, and I was like, no. Is there anything I can do to change this? I can't think of anything that I did wrong. What's happening? But then Teddy somehow manages to help her come back to life. I still don't understand how that worked. But she came back to life. And the relief, I had another wave of tears. There were joyful ones that time, kind of like the characters in this. But I love that. I love that it dangled the threat of death. It did say, look, there are still stakes here. Things could still be very bad here. But we're not letting this kid die. And like I say, when everyone came together at the end, it was beautiful to see everyone and not have the protagonist die. But the thing I really want to sort of end on with this is Mr. Edogawa's virtual classroom, which hits a little weirder now than it probably did on its original release. But I love the idea that they finally had a format to say, this is what inspired a lot of the stuff here. We looked into Jungian psychology, which is why we call them personas and shadows, because that's what works. The idea of the collective unconsciousness, which leads into the sort of Vox Populi and SOS features. The idea that there are multiple versions of a consciousness out there that kind of come together to one idea, and then your unconscious is built on top of that, and then you're conscious. And I love the fact they did that. They talked about these rather deep philosophical, and psychological ideas, but just presented it in just these additional things that you don't even have to see. You can enjoy the game without them, but every time I got a notification a new one was up, I was like, right, best save, and let's have a look at Mr. Edogawa's classroom. And I really enjoyed how they sort of, like I say, gave us that window into Jungian psychology and also their inspirations. I loved it, and I can't wait for Atlus and Sega to give us Persona 5 in some form. It'll probably be the Royal version on Steam. I really want that to happen. I am ready for it. I am here for it. I want to know why everyone loves Joker so much. Not the Batman one, Persona Joker. I want to know why everyone loves them. But that's all I want to say about Persona 4. And if you've not played it, go and play it now. If you have played it and it's been a while, go and play it now. But that's all I'm going to say today, so until next time, as always, thank you for watching and take care.